I don't know why I get nervous before we go on the air still. I've done this so many times. I've done ring announcing in front of hundreds of people. I always seem to get some sort of physical form of performance anxiety. I know in my head I'll do okay, but my body just reacts differently. It's weird. I guess I still get that performance anxiety in the similar sort of way when you're banging a new girl for the first time. I've done it before. I know I'll do a good job. I just want to keep people coming. Back for more. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Welcome to Wrestling Roundtable Radio, 347-857-4647. Taking your calls later on today, and we've got plenty to talk about. And right up at the top of the hour, right after NXT, want to bring on Will Brooks. Hello, Will.
Good evening.
I just met Bela Lugosi Jr. Last month or so, now that you put on the Dracula accent. For your information. Also, Will Vafides. Hello, Will.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be back on radio. And always remember to go to tldwrestling.com.
Yes, just open the TLD website, tldwrestling.com. Is that Black Friday sale still going on?
You know what? I have decided that since I'm in the holiday spirit, I'm going to extend those Black Friday deals till tomorrow. And guess what? Everybody gets a chance to have a TLD bear or action figure. Eric already got all my stuff. He bought the whole deal.
You are a big bear, aren't you?
Ah, yes.
If you're surfing the net while looking at the TLD website, please go to WrestlingRoundtable.com. You can support the show by getting the Wrestling Roundtable t-shirt. And a reminder, anything you get on WrestlingRoundtable.com, whether it's Pro Wrestling Respect DVDs or the t-shirt, you will get free independent wrestling DVDs with your purchase while supplies last. And if you're still doing some holiday shopping, please do it through our Amazon store. You can get anything that you want to get off of Amazon.com through our Amazon store. Please do it to support the show. And that show is Wrestling Roundtable. Wrestling Roundtable Radio now, starting off with MMA. Last time we were going to talk about MMA, and I pushed it back to this edition, and lots of big stories going on in MMA. One of them is the merger of WEC into UFC. And it seems as if this was Zuffa's plan all along, or so they said. And my initial reaction was I was not too happy about that because I was such a big WEC fan. Separate. I liked the idea that they were keeping it as a sister promotion, distinct for the most part from UFC by having the lighter weight classes. I wasn't too happy with the lightweight division crossing over, so to speak, because I think you should have kept WEC unique. They should have even jumped on the women who got freed up once Elite XC went under. Now, of course, Elite XC being bought by Strikeforce, so maybe they didn't have the chance, but if Dana White's getting asked all the time about these fighters, at the time anyway, like Gina Carano and Cyborg, and his point was that the women MMA pool is not very deep. Absolutely true. We bitch about it all the time. But if he's going to get a head start, I think WEC would have been a perfect platform for it, and they just had their first pay-per-view this year. Now, a lot of people were saying that WEC wasn't doing that well financially. It seemed as if they always drew decent crowds at their cards in California or Nevada. But they are saying that this was the long-term plan. We're even going to be introducing the 125 weight division, flyweight. So they're importing over the featherweight and bantamweight weight classes and going to be doing eventually unification fight for the lightweight titles. And I'm starting to see the other side of the coin, and there seems to be a lot of positives. But let's see what you think. Will Brooks, what do you think about Zuffa absorbing WEC into the bigger, more famous UFC?
I like it. It gives these guys a bigger platform to perform on. I mean, the first time people see Jose Aldo on pay-per-view, they're going to be like, holy shit, this guy's amazing. There's a lot of great fighters who can get way more exposure, and it's going to be great for us fans. We get to see even more great fights. And now every pay-per-view can have a title fight.
Well, yeah, they're going to get to that point. Will Vafides.
It was a good business decision. It brings another uniqueness to UFC now where they have new weight classes, so I think that definitely is a good idea to bring them in. The only thing I could see being a negative is that we used to see WEC a lot on free TV. We might not get that next year as much as we get this year. We just had two free, I mean, UFC is always going to have their Ultimate Fighter finale and one or two fights that are going to be for free, but that's less MMA fights that you get to see on TV now for free. So it's going to be a lot more pay-per-view driven, I think, because they make the killing on pay-per-view. So that's the only thing I can see being the downside. Otherwise, I think it's great. I think it's great to see these two merge together. I don't think WC was getting as much attention as they probably either deserved or they, people are like, it's like a small promotion. No one really knows much about it, I guess. I don't think the marketing was there for them.
Chris Harris was always saying to me when we would watch the UFC pay-per-views that they should be doing at least one showcase fight to let people know about WEC and get that name out there more. Now, what you're saying about there being less shows on free TV, that was part of their Versus deal. And I know Versus isn't as widespread as Spike TV. A lot of people didn't get it, not to say that no one got it, but it was considerably less, I think, as far as access goes to Spike TV. But UFC did sign a deal with Versus to obviously have those live specials that they've had this year, and they're going to expand on that in the coming year. So maybe they'll make up for it, maybe not. Jay Leto, you're on. Hey, Jay.
Oh, what's happening, Eric? How you doing tonight?
Doing all right. Glad to see you join the panel. And we're talking WEC, as you know. And before I get your thoughts on it, I wanted to point out how it's interesting timing because, first of all, I want to recommend a book to everybody because one of the great parts about this show that really makes me feel good because I love MMA, most of us love MMA, and a lot of the wrestling fans aren't too keen on that right now. The way I like to look at wrestling, pro wrestling versus MMA is like the MasterCard logo. You have the two circles that have their separate pools because it is, quote, two different things. Yeah. But there is that intersection in the middle because we all know the obvious parallel between them is one is the real form of the other. And there's a Cold War going on between pro wrestling and mixed martial arts because we all know that as much as they publicly say that we're two separate things, we want nothing to do with the other or whatever, we all know that's not totally true. WWE internally, this is not particularly well known, I don't think, analyzes UFC. What are they doing? What's their website traffic numbers? They pay more attention to UFC than to TNA, let's put it that way. Not that they don't pay attention to TNA, obviously they do, but they do know that UFC is eating into their audience to a degree with at least the pay-per-views, as much as they know sell that at their investor conferences and poo-poo that. Well, what are they going to do? Admit that the real thing is better or is taking audience? Or they don't want even to acknowledge it just so people don't go over to the other side. On the other side of the coin, mixed martial arts doesn't want anything to do with pro wrestling because, I mean, just look at boxing. The stigma with staged fights over there and the early days of UFC to say nothing about what fucking goes on in Japan because that's at least used to at the height of Pride because that's a whole other thing. But they are built on the sport. What do you think the catchphrase or the tagline, rather, for UFC means, as real as it gets? We know what they're talking about. So I find the Cold War going on between, as I like to call it, between pro wrestling and MMA very interesting. But the reason I brought this up is because I wanted to recommend to everybody the book Total MMA. It's a great book about the history of mixed martial arts, even going back to the formation of judo in Japan as an answer to jiu-jitsu, all the way up to the current day. You can get that, by the way, at the Amazon store on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Highly recommended. Great book. And one of the interesting things in that book that I never knew, and this goes back to the parallels between pro wrestling and UFC, is that the reason UFC got another chance on pay-per-view is because WCW and ECW both went out of business or got bought in 2001. If you think about it, that kind of makes sense because cable companies are looking at it like, wow, that's way over 16 pay-per-views a year that we don't have slots for. Shit. So UFC had been banned on pay-per-view for a few years or so. They gave it another shot. A couple years later, after Ultimate Fighter, blah, 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 here we are. Amazing story. But some tidbit I never knew I found very interesting, that wrestling companies dying 9 years ago gave mixed martial arts another chance. Now, the parallel between what WWF did to their competition and UFC did to their competition is also very fascinating, because the second biggest MMA promotion in the world, Pride, in Japan, there was a scandal with the Yakuza, as there is with every promotion in Japan, real and fake, by the way, but that's a whole other thing. So the second biggest MMA promotion in the world gets bought by Zuffa, and they say at first that they're going to keep that separate brand running on its own, and then decide, we're just going to shelve it and merge all the talent into our main roster. Sound familiar? Then they buy this smaller promotion out in California, WEC, and keep it running separate. And that went on for several years up until this year. Sound familiar? I guess WEC, you switch around the letters and you get ECW, and then I guess Pride would be WCW in this scenario. I just find that parallel very interesting, that they both ended up doing the same thing with their counterparts. So now that my long-winded diatribe is over, what do you think about this merging, Jay, of WEC into UFC? Positives outweigh the negatives?
Absolutely. There's no way they can't. We're going to get to see a lot more fighters, a lot new fighters that haven't been showcased on this level before. And as I heard Will Brooks say, a bigger pay-per-view audience is going to get to see Jose Aldo. Uriah Faber is definitely a pay-per-view draw as it is, so he'll be put in some high-level fights. And we'll get to see some of these UFC lightweights finally get to mix it up with these guys in the WEC that they haven't fought yet, and I think that'll be very interesting. There's no way to really call this negative, in my opinion. I mean, UFC is just going to put on more shows that are going to be free on TV. They might even add a pay-per-view or two. Who knows what they're going to do? They're going to get globally recognized in more areas. It's really positive for the sport in general, and it'll even help brands like Strikeforce and everything else as well, showcasing smaller athletes. So I really like it.
Obviously, the biggest star, not that he was the most successful, but obviously the biggest star in WEC was Uriah Faber. Kerry Von Erich's smaller lookalike, I suppose, because he's so cute. Well, that's what the marketing was based on, in his popularity, really. But did you see his last fight, his debut at bantamweight?
Yeah, I did. He looked really good.
Yeah, against Takeya Mizugaki, and he seemed to bounce back into form after suffering some big losses to Jose Aldo and Mike Brown.
Yeah, he's a great fighter, man. He's very unorthodox. He throws some weird strikes that probably nobody's ever seen before in some certain cases. He's a great draw when it comes to pay-per-views and everything. If he fights, you could literally put him as a co-main event against nobody anyone's ever heard of, and people will buy and be interested in watching a UFC event. It'll definitely help a lot.
That was at WEC 52 last month or so, and the WEC event coming up in a couple weeks is going to be the last one, and they're going out with a bang when lightweight champion Ben Henderson faces Anthony Pettis. Wow, that's going to be a great fight. I'm a fan of both guys, and at least they're going out in style. But going in style is Rodney LeConte. Hey, yo, Rod.
Hey, yo, what's going on?
Glad to see you join the panel. And obviously, we were talking about WEC being merged into UFC. What do you think?
We've talked about this before, Eric. I think this is probably one of the greatest things to happen for UFC. These guys put on great shows. Always usually puts on an entertaining show because, the lighter guys can really go at it. They put their heart out on it. And you just from the addition from the lightweight division, the great fights we have from there, from UFC, and now that you're putting these fights on a bigger stage, I think now these fighters are going to get the recognition and the general respect that they're fighting for. And you see what the lightweight guys, like Mayweather and Pacquiao, they're basically saving boxing, have the sport of boxing on their shoulders. And I think that, these lighter guys like Uriah Faber and Jose Aldo and Miguel Torres, Dominic Cruz, I think they're really going to take the popularity of MMA to a whole new level.
I'm glad you mentioned Manny Pacquiao, because we were talking about how the lighter guys, as you just said, bring great fights usually. And off the top of my head, I can't even think of the last time I thought, man, WEC is such boring fights. It's pretty rare. I mean, that pay-per-view they put on was a great show, one of the best Zuffa-produced shows of the year. However, last time we were talking about MMA, we were talking about the foreign shows, because there was a UK show with Bisping and Akiyama, that headlined a card that we didn't think was too spectacular, and we were asking, should international shows be given some more juice, so to speak, some more beef, maybe title fights to entice foreign fans to get into this phenomena? And then, sure enough, on November 13th out of Germany, UFC 122, I love that it was the same night as the Manny Pacquiao-Antonio Margarito fight. And I know you're a big boxing fan, Jay. Were you flipping between both or watching picture-in-picture like me?
Oh, I was flipping between both for sure, man. I was really pumped to see Pacquiao whoop Margarito's ass after that bullshit he pulled on Freddie Roach making fun of his Parkinson's disease, man.
Well, if you saw the 24/7 on HBO hyping this fight, you also saw Margarito kind of make light of that whole gauze situation that got him suspended for a year, and I thought that was pretty bullshit. Anytime that boxing goes up against UFC, you often see Dana White get asked about it because he is a boxer initially and did boxing aerobics classes and is a big boxing fan, always tweets about the fights. And he also rips on HBO's production. Yet you kind of understand where when HBO was interested in getting a piece of this MMA pie, UFC was like, we don't want to hand over the production to you. Sorry, no deal. I think it takes a lot of balls, first of all, to stick by your guns in any situation, which they also did to CBS, I believe. But to say it to HBO, that's pretty cool that they feel so strongly about their own product. We're not handing it over to anybody. But if they're going to hand it over to anybody, I could see why they wouldn't want to do it to HBO, because at the same time that UFC's main event was going on, which was in the middleweight division, HBO at that point was getting set to go into the Pacquiao-Margarito fight. Now, somehow in boxing, Manny Pacquiao can win a divisional title that he was about 15 pounds less than. I don't know how that happened, but at any rate, they bring out musical acts, do national anthems, all this other sort of shit. Well, the main event of UFC started and ended before the bell rang for the main event. It was unbelievable how much time they wasted. Well, let's jump ahead to UFC 123, November 20th, a week later at the Palace of Auburn Hills in Michigan. Were you as happy as I was when, in the light heavyweight division, Phil Davis defeated Tom Boach with a hammerlock?
Oh, yeah, that was incredible. What strength he showed. It was an unbelievable finish.
I think they were calling it a wizard lock I saw somewhere. I never heard of that, but you heard the announcers at the time saying they didn't even know what to call it. And, of course, me growing up on pro wrestling, I just knew it as a hammerlock.
Yeah, it looked sort of like his own version of Americana, but that's one of the first things I thought when I saw it.
In the middleweight division, however, Gerald Harris, who had a great showing at the Lesnar-Carwin event, didn't have a good showing this time against Michael Falco, making his UFC debut at all. In fact, he was released after this event. But there's an investigation going on into whether there was an early first-round stoppage by 7 seconds. And those were a key 7 seconds because he happened to catch Harris in a rear naked choke that looked like it was really deep and about to finish him, but then those 7 seconds, if they were actually an occurrence, possibly human error, might have cost Falco an early first-round submission.
You really expect a lot from both these guys. These guys are marketed as two knockout artists.
Yeah,
so
I was disappointed too.
You expected a slugfest, especially since Gerald Harris has been finishing his opponents. Same Gerald Harris I saw at 116, and the fight night before is not the same Gerald Harris that I saw at 123. I mean, he was very lackluster towards the end, not taking advantage of any openings. I really don't blame Dana White for releasing him, especially for his lack of sportsmanship at the end too.
Well, not so much the sportsmanship. At least the first thing out of his mouth was, this is the big stage. You got to play to win. You have to make it look like you really want this. And in that last round or so, Harris really wasn't showing that.
Yeah, Harris was very disappointed. I don't know if he got gassed early, if he wasn't in shape. I think I heard Joe Rogan say that he won like his last 10 fights in a row before this fight or something like that. And to see him come out and just put on such a poor performance, I mean, there was no urgency in the third round whatsoever. where both guys weren't really going for it at all. I thought Harris was actually going to maybe sneak him and knock him out in the third round because he was in trouble early on, but he kind of got through it. He weathered the storm a little bit. And just knowing that this guy had won 10 fights in a row or whatever, didn't he win, like, that one fight with a slam? Like, he had strength. Yeah. He has some power. So I thought maybe he'd win via knockout, but it just didn't happen. He didn't seem to be showing any urgency. I guess he figured that no matter what the outcome was, he'd still have another shot. But as we know, that wasn't the case.
Definitely not. And a complete opposite in terms of effort, spectrum, outcome, everything was B.J. Penn returning to welterweight when he knocked Matt Hughes the fuck out in 21 seconds. Will Brooks, your thoughts?
I always felt B.J. Penn had more talent than Matt Hughes, and it was nice to see the rubber match finally after all these years. I thought B.J. Penn was winning the second fight until Matt Hughes put him in the crucifix. But winning it at 21 seconds really just says a whole lot about that. Matt Hughes just really doesn't have it anymore, though.
I think you see this effect in a lot of these fighters who have been around a long time and used to have this reputation. Obviously, years ago when Matt Hughes was welterweight champion, when they were calling his fights, they constantly hammered it home that he's a future Hall of Famer, and that's deserved. I don't like Matt Hughes at all, but I can't take away from him that he's a great fighter. However, Chuck Liddell was a great fighter too, and he's getting knocked out all the time now. So is Matt Hughes getting into that category where he should really start considering retirement?
I don't think so. I think he's got a couple more fights left in him. I mean, he won 3 in a row. He beat Ricardo Almeida really decisively, choked him out with a vicious anaconda. He beat the shit out of Renzo Gracie and won a unanimous against Matt Serra. I mean, he won 3 in a row. So there was no reason to think that he couldn't go in there and compete with B.J. Penn, who, to tell you the truth, he didn't really look that great against Frankie Edgar. B.J. Penn came out and definitely caught Matt Hughes off guard. I think Matt Hughes was looking for more of the same B.J. Penn that fought Frankie Edgar. That wasn't too aggressive, wait to get into the groove of the fight, not go after him right away. But B.J. Penn, you know, he looked like he was on something. Like, not literally, but he looked like he was just outraged. You know, he really wanted to knock his fucking block off, and he did that, man. And I'm a big Matt Hughes fan. You know, he's not the same fighter he used to be when he was the welterweight champion. But he ran off a lot of wins in a row when he was champ, and I don't think there's any reason to think that he doesn't have a couple more left in him. I mean, I don't think he's 40 years old yet. If he starts getting knocked out left and right, you know, then maybe it might be time to hang it up. But I think he'll be back for sure.
Well, he was not on our recent poll on WrestlingRoundtable.com on who should retire from MMA the most. The results were 0% went to Kazushi Sakuraba, who's going to be fighting on the Dream New Year's Eve event after losing to Jason Mayhem Miller, and he's getting a title shot. What is this, Strikeforce? And I'm sure he got 0% because the audience had no idea who he was. Anyway, Mirko Krop got 1% of the vote. Jens Pulver only got 8%, and Pulver keeps getting pulverized in all his fights, so he should probably be higher. But anyway, Dan Severn got 9%, and even in his 50s, he's won a whole shitload of his last fights. In fact, I can't remember the last time he lost, but of course it's not exactly number one top 10 ranking competition he's facing either. Chuck Liddell got 16%. Tito Ortiz got 26%, surprisingly enough. But the number one, and I think would definitely have to be after his fight in South Africa the other week, was Ken Shamrock at 40%. Man, this guy is definitely the guy that we are talking about now. Matt Hughes is definitely not this bad. But, man, this guy is losing to guys who have shitty records, more losses than wins, no names, and just getting destroyed. He got his legs clipped out from under him by Pedro Hizzo the other month, and he just keeps taking these fights, I guess, to try and make some money while he still can, but it's just really getting sad for Ken Shamrock, so he probably should have been number one anyway. But back to Matt Hughes and B.J. Penn. Was this the return of the B.J. Penn we didn't see and thought we would against those Frankie Edgar fights, Rodney?
Nope, I think it's the same B.J. Penn.
I know you're against that whole theory that it wasn't the old B.J. Penn, but that's what people were saying. Yes, this is what we meant.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you lose, close fight to someone who's quicker, faster, smarter game plan, it's the B.J. Penn. But the second he wins, see, there he is. I mean, it's just everyone jumping on the bandwagon. And you know what? I clapped because, number one, I do like B.J. Penn, and I knew it. I was like, I cannot wait for people to start saying, here's new B.J. Penn, blah, blah, blah. I was really surprised it went the way it did. I did think that BJ was going to win. He really was motivated. He called out two people he both wanted, GSP and Matt Hughes. And once this fight was announced, it was probably the fight I was looking forward to the most. Matt Hughes, even with his wrestling base, he always falls in love with his stand-up. And it's not the best, but this time it was his biggest enemy. And I knew BJ Pettis was going to be quicker. His boxing was way better. Yeah, I'm just surprised the way Matt Hughes went down, but it's BJ Penn, so listen to a guy like that is nothing to be ashamed of.
Before we get to the main event of 123, one of the most surreal moments in UFC history, I think it may have actually been rock bottom for UFC, even below a Tim Sylvia fight. What the fuck was that Antoine guy doing in the crowd? They actually cut to, "We're going to find your ass, you're stupid, blah, blah, blah." What the fuck was that?
That was the best thing ever. I popped so loud for that. I saw that on the Dana White blog, and I told everybody. That was the highlight of the night.
You are stupid.
Highlight of the night.
Anyway, to the main event, one of the biggest draws in UFC, Quentin Rampage Jackson at light heavyweight defeated Lyoto the Dragon Machida. Machida lost 2 fights in a row I think it's really 3, but officially 2 fights in a row. That's the 2 on his record. Seems some people were upset with the decision, but I had it scored for Rampage. What'd you think it was, Rodney? Was it a robbery, or was Quentin the rightful winner?
It's really hard to say because it's so close. It could have went either way. I was really surprised about the decision. I thought they would have given it to Machida. It's really all about the first round. Machida kept running away, and Rampage was pushing base. And judges are going to see that as aggression. I mean, ring aggression, kind of control, that's what judges look for. And unfortunately, Machida really didn't start really doing anything until the last round. And he finished strong. So, I mean, people are going to have that last impression, so they're going to think that he's the winner. I could see a lot of people giving Rampage the first 2 rounds. Decision did surprise me, but I could see how the judges could see that fight going for Rampage.
Well, I could see it going for Rampage because that's how I scored it. What I couldn't understand is how it was a split decision, and I don't see how anyone could have awarded it to Machida, but maybe you guys think otherwise. What do you think, Will?
The way Machida's style is, he's not an aggressive guy. He's a counter guy. So when you do that, you're not going to be aggressive. So you have to at least try to be able to finish or you to do something to get the points, and he didn't do that. That's his style. Now, do I think he could have? I think he should have won. Like Rodney said, I could see how they voted either way. I can see why they give it to Quentin because Lyoto wasn't being aggressive until he took him down and went for the submissions. But then there was nothing.
Yeah, I thought Rampage won the fight, Eric. I agree with you. Knowing the way they score fights sometimes in mixed martial arts, I thought they might have scored it for Machida because of that dominant second round where he, put Rampage down and was going for the submissions and whatever. But Rampage escaped. I mean, he escaped Machida's ground attack, almost slammed him. Machida was lucky not to get slammed because that could have been lights out for Machida. But,
that was a great counter.
It was a really good counter. It was an amazing counter. I've never seen a counter like that before. And Quentin Jackson, he definitely was more aggressive in every round. Definitely pushed the pace. Octagon control is one of the ways they score fights in UFC. So I think he won the fight. He was surprised he won the fight. He said he took an ass kicking, and he did in the second round. But he definitely showed some of the old Rampage, like swinging for the fences a little bit when Machida started to attack him. He backed up and was throwing fists like fucking crazy. So I'm glad the decision went Rampage's way, and I was really happy to see that.
Moving on to this past Saturday, big night of fights. Ultimate Fighter 12 finale, right at the top, the opening fight, at least on the broadcast, history with the first featherweight bout in UFC history, and I was very happy because I'm a big Leonard Garcia fan. I think he's cute in a complete non-homo way. I think he looks like a little turtle you see in a pet store. So I think he's kind of like an ugly cute, if that makes any sense. But I'm a big fan of his, again, from WEC. However, I was not a fan of the Nevada State Athletic Commission assigning these fucking judges to this fight because, wow, that was, I think, even topping the first Shogun Machida fight for one of the most biggest bullshit decisions I've seen maybe ever. And the crowd and the fighters seem to agree with me. So what do you think, Jay? Was that a complete fucking robbery?
Absolutely, man. You're kidding? Anybody who watched that fight, who has seen MMA before, even people who haven't seen MMA before, would score that fight for Nam Fan. He won all 3 rounds, in my opinion. That 3rd round, Garcia was being aggressive, but he wasn't really landing anything. Nam Fan was landing clean shots while being, conservative and not getting knocked out by one of Garcia's looping right hands. Nam Fan dominated him in the 2nd round, almost finished him, very close to finishing him. I think he dictated the pace of the fight, landed more clean strikes. He did everything he needed to do to win a decision. But, as Joe Rogan said, sometimes this is the way these idiot judges score fights, and it shows you that you have to finish the fight in most cases. You just fucking have to. Nam Fan, good for him that the crowd was for him, and everybody else seemed to. And Joe Rogan went out on a limb and went nuts on the Nevada State Athletic Commission, because this isn't going to really count as a loss for him. He's going to be back. He's going to get a good fight the next time he's in the octagon. So Dana White knows that, and he'll give him some good competition next time he's in there, because he really did win the fight, no question about it.
In fact, Dana White even gave him the fight win bonus after the show. And I liked that Joe Rogan pointed this out, because especially for a growing sport like mixed martial arts, a lot of fans might be newer to it, not understand it. I know certainly, like I alluded to with that Shogun Machida fight, the first thing I'm thinking is, man, they're fucking biased. They're trying to protect the dragon, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's just completely wrong, because the point is, in the Nevada State Athletic Commission has defended the judges they assigned to this show at the Pearl at the Palms Casino Resort by saying, well, we send all these Vegas judges to UFC shows internationally. We use them all the time, and there's never a problem, blah, blah, blah. That might be so, but I think it is important, like Joe Rogan was trying to do, to point out to newer fans or fans who aren't familiar that these judges are assigned in every state. The athletic commission of whatever state they're in assigns these judges and the referees. I believe the way it works, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they're given a set of referees to work with on a given day or state or event, and they assign those referees to a specific fight. So it's not like they're getting to choose all these factors, whether it's judges or referees or anything. So they're being assigned these people. It's out of their hands. That's the complete wrong impression if you think they're trying to protect anybody. But that being said, this was in Las Vegas. It's not like it was in Texas, like when Strikeforce had a show there a few months ago, and there was a whole fucking, at least from me, uproar about the horrible officiating. This is Las Vegas, so these guys should know better. And their explanation was, well, Garcia was throwing a lot of punches and pressing the fight. Well, that might be so, but A, they should be familiar with Garcia's work. And if you are, like I was, you should just know this is his style. He tires himself out by trying to throw all these punches. Now, with Garcia, you're always going to get an exciting fight, which I think is great. He just has a non-stop pace. He slows down because he exerts all his energy, and a lot of those punches may not land, but he's always constantly working. He's constantly throwing strikes, punches, kicks, whatever. He's always active, so that's good at least. But that being said, especially, I couldn't understand that only one judge scored it 30-27 like I did for Nam Fan. I couldn't believe anyone else scored it otherwise, because I think especially in that first round, Nam Fan may not have thrown as many strikes, but the ones he did landed and landed hard. It really shows how strong of a chin Garcia has. It was incredible that he absorbed all those strikes, especially one of those kicks that looked like it would have knocked out anybody else. So what's your take on that fight, Rodney? Was it a robbery like Jay and I were saying?
Yeah, that one definitely went the wrong decision. Something has to happen with these judges, because it's really sad that, like, you know, the sport that we love, we keep having to deal with these mishaps, you should say, and this kink in the armor of the sport of mixed martial arts. There really should be a certification program for these judges. I know Big John McCarthy runs some programs. I remember hearing a story in one of these seminars that McCarthy was giving out, and like one of the judges didn't even know what the guard was. So that tells you right there how educated these judges were. I mean, I don't know if I know they were using boxing judges. I don't know if they still are in some cases.
There are a lot of old boxing judges used, obviously, yeah.
Two different sports. So we really, hopefully within the next few years, the state commissions will really start getting more qualified judges, and we won't have to be talking about these disappointing outcomes anymore.
Well, in one of the many news updates I wrote for WrestlingRoundtable.com in the past week, there's a great story about this new scoring system that's going to be tested out, at least in California, in amateur MMA fights throughout the next year, I believe in over 100 bouts, and it's going to be scored along with the old system under the unified rules, and they're going to compare them at the end of the year and see which one works better. And this new system takes a lot of different things into accounting: half-point ranking system, a fourth table judge, different point scores for dominance, damage, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully that leads to some better fucking scoring from a lot of these judges, because at this point it's really getting out of control. And I think the only thing you can say to summarize that fight was it was a goddamn Nam fan scam, man. Moving on to the light heavyweight division, Stephan Bonnar wins a unanimous decision over Igor Pokrajic. Rodney, thoughts?
I like Stephan Bonnar a lot, and I was really glad to see him win. I thought there were a few points where he could have finished it, but I think Bonnar, showed great wrestling defense. He showed his great striking. Yeah, he definitely got the decision. I'd like to see Stephan back in the win column.
And in the finals of the Ultimate Fighter lightweight finale, Jonathan Brookins defeated Michael Johnson. Didn't exactly have the mojo of other MJs like Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan. He didn't exactly excel like they did, but Jonathan Brookins earned this fight, I think. I definitely had him scoring it, no doubt. What do you think, Jay?
Well, there was another famous Michael Johnson who was the fastest man in the world at one point, an American track runner. But anyway, Jonathan Brookins, I thought that he was going to get his fucking head knocked off in the first round, man.
When he got dropped with that uppercut.
Yeah, I thought it was over right then and there. But, Michael Johnson showed on The Ultimate Fighter that if you go long in the fight with him, I know he made it to the finals, but if you go deep in the fight with him, he starts to lose a little bit of his steam, and he's not as good. If he can take you down, he'll land you and try to keep the fight going and try to win the round that way. But Jonathan Brookins really was able to capitalize. He's a smart fighter. I liked watching him fight. He had a great ground game, great wrestling. I don't know how he's going to do against top tier opponents in the UFC, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see, man. He looked good in the Ultimate Fighter. He looked good in the second and third rounds on the finale. So congratulations to him.
Lastly on UFC, before we get to Strikeforce, and that will be our last little bit on MMA fans, and then we'll be taking your calls. 124 is this Saturday, the big Koscheck-George St. Pierre fight, and I love the ads building up to this. I thought it was very cool, very unique, of showing them training and punching and kicking the pictures of each other, and thought it was a very cool motif. So what are your thoughts on the GSP Koscheck fight, Jay? Who do you think is going to take it?
George St. Pierre. I really don't have a prediction on how long it's going to go, however. These are two guys with their last couple fights. They've kind of just been able to take the other guy down and kind of dominate him on the ground, maybe go into distance, maybe finish him off somehow. So I'm not really sure where it's going to go, but I'm going to take George St. Pierre either way. I like him a lot more now that I watched The Ultimate Fighter this season. He was really down to earth, real laid back. And Josh Koscheck was just doing everything he could to be the heel. I'm pulling for him. I think he's going to beat the shit out of Koscheck one way or the other. So that's how I hope it goes.
I think Josh Koscheck will get kicked in the face and taken down, and I think GSP will be the victor in this fight. Thank you.
Koscheck's going to win because he's a heel, and that's why. Heels always win. And not to mention that Matt Serra used to be a former UFC champion, defeated St. Pierre.
I didn't hear that. I'm just fucking with you, Will.
I'll tell you the date.
I'm just fucking with you, Will. Rodney LeConte, your pick.
GSP. Koscheck has come a long way since the last fight. He's the last guy to take a round from St. Pierre. Probably the last guy to get a takedown on St. Pierre. But he's just really not on St. Pierre's level right now. I think St. Pierre's top of the game. He's younger than Koscheck. I think he's faster. It's going to be interesting because of the build-up to this fight. Koscheck's a great wrestler. I'm sure he's really been working on his defense. It's really going to be a fun fight to watch either way.
Well, we know Jim Ross will definitely be watching it. I love how you hear how guys like The Rock and Austin are going to UFC and Batista's going into it now, and how people like The Rock said and Undertaker said, well, if I had a chance to do MMA like this sort of stuff before I got into wrestling, I would have done this and blah, blah, blah. And now you got people like Jim Ross blogging about it all the time. Joey Styles said, I'm done calling wrestling. I will call MMA, though. Jim Ross would certainly like to do that, too. But it's funny how everyone in wrestling is seemingly into mixed martial arts as well, but at the same time as the ultimate finale on Spike, Strikeforce Henderson versus Babalu 2 was going on Showtime. I think they could retroactively change it to Strikeforce Night of the Knockouts. Right off the bat, Antonio Bigfoot Silva, he was supposed to originally face Valentin Overeem, brother of Strikeforce heavyweight champion Alistair, but got replaced by Mike Kyle at the last minute, seemingly. Still, he survived that onslaught by Mike Kyle in the first round. Looked like he could have gotten beaten really quickly, and I love my hammer fists, but that huge head of his absorbed all of it. I every time I see him fight, I can't believe that huge head.
I mean, that head has to be half his weight.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Bigfoot and that Bigfoot symbol, I guess the international symbol for Bigfoot is that foot on his back. You ever notice that of all the Bigfoot molds they've made of their footprints, they always have flat feet? Maybe I'm the only one who noticed that. But anyway, Antonio comes back and wins with a TKO over Mike Pyle, and that's just the first of many. Your thoughts on the fight, Rodney? Is Antonio Silva in the title scene for the heavyweight division that seemingly doesn't exist in Strikeforce?
Eric, I think if you put on weight and want to fight Strikeforce, you'd be in the title scene at this point. I mean, is there a title scene? I don't know. That is very optimistic about 2011, but they have a card in January, but yet they can't even tell it's one fight that's going to be on the card. And that's
Herschel Walker might fight on it. Might,
yeah, okay. I believe it when I see it.
1-0 Herschel Walker, the Freak Show fight. And I like Herschel Walker. I thought his debut fight this year was cool. I'm glad that he was able to do it at his age, and obviously he's not going for a title or anything, but man, what a fucking mess. You got Alistair Overeem doing K1 over in Japan, kickboxing. Verdum beats the biggest fucking heavyweight in the world. Well, not literally big, but I mean the last emperor, Fedor Emelianenko, the best fighter in the fucking world, and then both of them drop off the face of the planet and become a non-story. Scott Coker, this fucking idiot, says we should do Batista Lashley. Then he lets Lashley's contract run up, and then Batista, he's saying, oh, now it's going to be April or June. It keeps getting pushed further and further back. They haven't even signed him yet. So there goes his big fucking fight. And then they're still renegotiating with M1. He's got one fight left on his deal. They still are renegotiating with M1. They're always causing fucking problems. What a goddamn mess.
The two things that Strikeforce has against UFC is Fedor and Gina Carano, and none of them are getting utilized.
Yeah, well, thoughts on Robbie Lawler's knockout?
Wow. I thought, it might have come maybe second or third round. I thought Matt Lillard was going to use his Olympic-style wrestling. But, yeah, Robbie Lawler really caught him with that overhand right and just beat on him. And, he knew that Lillard was out and stopped and even straightened his feet out for him. But, yeah, that was unbelievable. Now it's the first of the trio, I should say.
I don't want to call him the Michael Vick of MMA because what Michael Vick did was completely fucking low and scummy. I can't believe he's making millions of dollars, but he's apparently talented. Point being that he's a talented scumbag. I guess that's Paul Daly because Strikeforce really is the TNA of MMA, just picking up UFC's leftovers no matter what, no questions asked. Paul Daly makes his debut at welterweight in Strikeforce with a huge KO of Scott Smith. Now, what he did to Koscheck was definitely a fireable offense. It's a shame that such a talented fighter would resort to that, punching Koscheck after the fight. But I think I saw better boxing out of Paul Daly than in that entire undercard of that Pacquiao-Margarito fight we were talking about. And we were arguing on the message board, Pat and I, about whether it was a knockout of the night, or I'm sorry, I called Paul Daly knocking out Scott Smith knockout of the year because he just clawed him clean, bam, straight face plant, like even better than a flare flop. What do you think, Rod?
I don't think what Paul Daly did was nearly as bad as what Michael Vick did.
I know. I tried making that point. I'm just saying that he's not the best character who happens to be talented.
Fights happen in all sorts of sports, so it's nothing that unusual, I guess.
That doesn't make it right.
The fight itself, I thought it was going to be an entertaining fight. I knew this wasn't a good decision, but Paul Daly, I think, he got caught in the beginning, but once he got Scott Smith down at first, you just saw who the more talented striker was. Scott Smith and his weren't going to work against someone as quick and as accurate as Paul Daly. And he caught him with that left hook, and man, Scott Smith just dropped like a rock. One of the only moments that made me jump up from Strikeforce, besides Twitter knocking out Red Rogers.
In the main event, which was the title of the show, Dan Henderson with a TKO over Renato Babalu Sobral.
I'm glad to see that Dan Henderson got back in the win column.
I thought it was good. I thought he needed the win. He looked good. He looked fast. Dan Henderson loves that overhand right. So once he was basically in Babalu's open guard, I knew that right hand was coming. He moved over his legs, got it, and Babalu was out. Before even Big John stepped in, Babalu was done.
I'd like to think now of Dan Henderson as the Brock Lesnar of Strikeforce. And by that I mean you have a former successful amateur wrestler who comes in his debut fight for a promotion, loses, wins his second fight, and gets a title shot. Because now he's going to be fighting light heavyweight champion Rafael Cavalcante. What do you think of that fight, Rod?
I think it's going to be good. Dan Henderson, he's 40 years old, but some people just don't age. I'd like to see him get a run in the title. I'd like to see him get a title in Strikeforce. I think he's definitely capable of it. He could definitely be a draw.
Some people don't age, huh, Dan Henderson? Well, I guess he's not the Brock Lesnar of Strikeforce. Maybe he's the Halle Berry of Strikeforce.
Yeah.
Let's take some calls now. Abe in Augusta, Georgia. You're on with Wrestling Roundtable Radio.
Did everybody see Sheamus' outfit last night?
Yes, I flopped to it.
I had to pick up Sheamus. I was having such a good night.
Okay, continue.
Amato, hello.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing?
Where are you out of, Amato? New York, New Jersey, something like that?
San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, completely fucking wrong.
Wow.
I actually caught right when they were getting ready to lock up was the Ultimate Fighter finale. Did you see the way Brookings was taking those punches to the face? I mean, seriously, I thought it was done in that first round. I don't know how he came back that second round. Came back and did his ground game for the second and third rounds. It was amazing how he was able to come back went into his corner, and then he got, a good takedown and won the second and third rounds.
Felix, or The Cake, in New York City.
Hey, what's up, Eric?
What's going on, Cake?
Well, right now, I'm still recovering from the loss that Machida had against Jackson, but he's going to come back. He's going to, whip ass again. But right now, I'm worried about him, badly.
Because of the 2 losses in a row?
Yeah.
Technically 3? Hey, I'm a big fan of Machida, too. I know you are, too, Rodney. But I still think he lost that first fight with Hua. But either way, that second fight was definitely decisive. But point being, that's 2 losses in a row. You think he's going to come back?
He will, but it'll take time, though.
What about Jose Aldo? Speaking of Jose Aldo, one thing that I really enjoyed about the 123 event is with the merging of WEC, they had an awesome video package for Aldo introducing him to this audience. And it was a great show to choose it onto because Jackson's such a big draw for UFC, so you figure a lot of people are watching this, and they're seeing this guy for the first time. And, of course, we've already seen him. We know what he's capable of. I guess it's, in a way, almost like when WWE fans get to see someone new like Loki or Danielson on a bigger scale, and they're impressed. And then they see Ring of Honor retroactively, and they're like, oh, this is where CM Punk came from. Well, no, people have seen him here before. We knew what he was capable of. So now we get this bigger audience to see Jose Aldo, and they're like, holy shit, look at this guy. And they had that great shot of him being presented with the former WEC, now renamed UFC featherweight belt in the ring in the suit with Dana White. That was really cool. And then they have him scheduled to defend the title the first time in UFC on January 1st at Resolution at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. I was thrilled because I have tickets to that. Aldo's one of my favorite guys. Then he gets some sort of fucking compact disc injury in training. Fuck! That's the way it goes. Well, let's move on to pro wrestling, but before we get to TNA Final Resolution, mentioned the poll before, in one of the latest polls on WrestlingRoundtable.com, we have a new one about The Miz up, and polls have been fucking up lately, so hopefully it still works but by the time you go to vote. But the previous poll we had is, who should The Undertaker face at WrestleMania? I am shocked that Shawn Michaels only got 1% of the vote. I guess 3 times isn't the charm for WWE fans, but he got less votes than everyone else. Stone Cold Steve Austin got 6% of the vote. I guess they'd rather see that because that's completely new and never been done. Goldberg got 7% of the vote. Now, that would have been my vote, because could you imagine Goldberg, Undertaker at the Georgia Dome at WrestleMania? Goldberg gets inducted in the Hall of Fame the night before, and then he faces Undertaker. Hey, if anybody knows about streaks, it's me. Anyway, Kane got 12% of the vote. I guess 3 times the charm works for Kane.
We're at 3,000.
Brock Lesnar got 14% of the vote. 14% of our voters can keep dreaming.
Yeah.
15% of the vote went to my joke answer of Sarah, although now that I think about it, I would rather see Sarah fight The Undertaker than Shawn Michaels again. Relax, people, it's a joke. The matches with Michaels were great. I just like bad shit. Well, not truly bad shit, because then I'd watch TNA. I'm not a masochist.
Oh.
Sheamus got 22% of the vote, Will Brooks. Sorry.
Oh.
And I think that was one of the names they were considering, along with Wade Barrett. But number 1, 23% of the vote went to John Cena, which would be the real way to fucking go. That match is money. However, a company not known for making a lot of money is TNA, and they presented Final Resolution this past Sunday at the Impact Zone in Orlando. If you've been watching pay-per-views the past few months as a wrestling fan, I think you'll end up seeing a lot of great matches, and that seems to be the consensus about TNA. Once again, the first half of the show is really awesome, and the second half not so much, but let's see what you think. Will Vafides, last month we were talking about the Tara Mickie James match as a really awesome exhibition of what these women can do, and some people were saying was women's match of the year. I don't know about that, but it was certainly up there, great energy level, I said. But this was the Falls Count Anywhere rematch. Did it measure up?
It was until the ending, and in a men's bathroom. That's where the ending of the match took place, basically. That was embarrassing because I was like, really, a men's bathroom? You know, like, there's a lot of seriousness in this feud. You know, that you can see how, like, you can see, like, the true hate for each other. But I think it's a little silly that they ended up in a men's bathroom.
It worked in '96 with Sullivan and He Who We Do Not Speak Of.
Yeah. Well, here's the difference. They're going to a men's bathroom. I just didn't think that one part worked for that particular match. That was just me.
Corey in Chicago, hello.
Hey, Eric.
Oh, God.
Another rematch from the month before, a turning point for the X title. Jay Lethal facing champion Robbie E. with Cookie in a cage above the ring. How did that go, Corey?
It wasn't the worst thing I've seen, but it could have been a little bit better. Of course, they were reusing an old concept that WCW used back in 1988, but I think that when they did it in '88 with Jim Cornette in the cage, it was a little bit more entertaining. The Shark Boy run-in was kind of okay, but now I really have no idea where the hell they're going with this.
That's what I was thinking about. Sorry, Corey, I was actually thinking the same thing you were, because when they announced it was a shark cage, I had a gut feeling that he was going to come out, but in my eyes, I'm like, I don't get it either. So
was that a fish gut feeling?
Wow.
TV champion AJ Styles lost the belt to Doug Williams. Kind of reminds me of something that would happen in the Murphy Rec Center in 2002 for Ring of Honor.
That was probably my favorite match. I don't really understand Douglas Williams winning it. I don't know if he's got I think he needs the belt to get over. AJ Styles obviously doesn't need anything. He's like the guy of that company. Douglas Williams needs the belt to get over. Overall, a very good match. They gave him a lot of time, too. I think that was one of the longest matches on the card. So that they gave him some time. So, like, the TNA TV title got some good ring time, I think, that night.
In what may have ended up being Rhino's last TNA match, at least for the time being, on this contract, or not contract that he's not under, lost the first blood match to Rob Van Dam. Seems like this whole EV2 angle is winding down.
It wasn't the best that they could have done, actually. I especially didn't...
know our fans on the message board are going to just say, when is she going to say something good?
It wasn't a bad match, but I think it could have been done a little bit differently. The spot where Rhino got that big gash on his head was kind of ugly. It wasn't bad. It just could have been done differently, that's all. Like
my last date. Luva Fidesz, the Full Metal Mayhem tag team match. We talked last month about how great the Motor City Machine Guns have been lately. They've been on a real roll. I guess this is TNA's answer to the tag ladder or Money in the Bank style matches or so, but Generation Me and Motor City Machine Guns seem like a great team to pull it off. Was it as well received by you as everyone else?
No, not at all. I think that it's run its course for this Generation Me. I'm sorry, I'm not into them, and I think that's not really their fault. It's more TNA's fault, because when they disappear from TV for like a month or two and then they come back out of nowhere, it doesn't make any sense. It should be Motor City Machine Guns and Beer Money. I have no idea why those two teams have not been feuding the entire year. That's the matches that we should be seeing. This one, I feel like I've seen it before, and the ending of the match was so slow. It just became a slow match. I mean, I just was not happy about it, just because the Machine Guns are better than this, and, you know, again, it's not their fault. I think it's TNA more not, you know, trying to throw Generation Me in there again, and they're just not getting over. They shouldn't be in TNA. I just don't think they got what it takes to do it.
A lot of people in the chat room were upset that the Pope did not win in the casket match against Abyss. So, Corey, was Abyss entertaining you by putting his fist through the casket and getting multiple cuts? It was for your entertainment. Was it worth it?
It was surprising, and I know it's going to sound weird, but I thought it was kind of funny, especially the build-up for it, where Pope came out of the ring. He looks like he's going to win the match, and for all intents and purposes, that should have happened. But when he went to go close the cage, you hear this sick, and then he starts crying. The camera zooms down. Abyss pinched him right in the happy place, through the casket, and I don't know, but that just struck me as completely funny. I was sad that Pope lost, but that segment was actually kind of funny.
Jeff Jarrett beating up the kids at the karate school I thought was cute. I don't know how there's a thread about how horrible that was. I thought it was funny on our message board. But that match was the last match, at least possibly at the time, of Samoa Joe's current deal. He might have signed a new one. Jeff Jarrett and Samoa Joe in the submission match. Will, what'd you think?
I'm actually kind of liking Jeff Jarrett's MMA idea. It gives him something different to do. You know, in a way, he's kind of insulting MMA, but he's also kind of like, you know, I'm a real MMA star, and I think it is kind of funny what he did in the school, because I thought that was pretty funny. It's something different for him, but in the end, it looks bad on Joe. Again, of course, there was a screw job ending. It's definitely setting up Kurt Angle's return, obviously, because of the ankle lock at the end. Joe should get out of TNA. I don't think he needs to be there. I think WWE can really market him. I feel bad for him because I know he's got a temper, which might be a problem with WWE, but he's got to get out of there. I mean, if he wants to, I mean, honestly, I hate to say this to every TNA person, but if you want to be a real professional wrestler, want to be a star, and you want to get over, you go to WWE, okay? Because you can't do it in TNA. You know, only one guy probably did, and that's AJ Styles, and not everyone knows who he is anyway. If he resigns with TNA, that's great, but I just don't see him going anywhere. There's just too many bodies there right now.
Technically, I liked most of the match, especially when Samoa Joe used that modified cloverleaf hold into another submission onto Jeff Jarrett.
I was agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. The only thing that really ruined this match was not the screw job.
Oh, here we go. You can't say one positive thing for more than 30 seconds. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Can you blame her?
The only thing that really killed it was not the screw job ending. That I saw coming. What killed it for me, and I'm surprised nobody's brought this up yet, prior to the match, they have this segment backstage. Samoa Joe is looking all tough. Jeff Jarrett is looking tough across from them. The both of them are doing sort of jabs at each other. The referee stands between them, and he's explaining the rules. It's a submission match. Submissions only, no pinfalls. The two wrestlers are like, we get it. We know what a submission match is. Neither of us are that stupid. They're jabbing at each other. This looks really good. I'm starting to get into this. Security nails Joe from behind. They take out Joe's ankle with a lead pipe, and then Jeff Jarrett does something that I'm shocked nobody caught because it was quite loud on the audio I was listening to. He bends over, smacks one of the security guards off of Joe and goes, "Stop it! What are you doing? No! Stop it! He killed it. He killed that whole angle right there. Stop it! Wrists bent, tapping his feet, going, I was supposed to wrestle Joe. What are you doing? They're helping you, silly. What are you doing? You sound like a girl on a live pay-per-view.
Well,
I'm surprised you guys didn't jump on that yet.
In the main event, historically throughout the several seasons of the show that we've done and the radio show, I've always ripped on Jeff Hardy. Never, ever liked this guy. Up until that video got posted from the diner of him and his brother seemingly either very, very tired or high and / drunk or whatever. Now, of course, the big story on the internet is that Jeff Hardy wasn't in any condition to perform before the pay-per-view. They were all upset. They were considering stripping the belt and doing another match, blah, blah, blah. And at first, everyone was saying he was hammered or high or whatever. And now it's, he was just exhausted from the trip to Abu Dhabi and all the shows and flying back for one day and blah, blah, blah. The wrestlers were defending him, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's just assume that that's a cover-up. And it's probably accurate. You might have had some exhaustion. Fine, I'll grant him that. But I just like to pretend that it's the other way because this is a guy who is going to be back in court tomorrow on the drug charges. And I just love the fact, I love the idea that this guy, this is the second time he's been to TNA. Both times have been after he's been fired from WWE for not going to rehab. TNA takes him under their wing, no questions asked. This time puts the belt on him. I hope he was drunk. I hope he was high. I hope he was fucked up because they put him on the pay-per-view anyway, and he retained the belt. And I just love the fact that he can get away with all this shit. So my hat's off to you, Jeff Hardy. I'm actually complimenting you for a change. I think it's hilarious. And I just, like I said before, I love bad shit to happen. So maybe he'll actually get thrown in jail and then they'll have to strip him of the belt. And what are they going to do? Pretend it's not all over the fucking news? They're going to have to actually say it. It's not like they can come up with some stupid storyline like he got ran over or something. So, anyway, Matt Morgan fulfilling Jim Cornette's wet dream by main eventing a pay-per-view once again. Rematch this time with Mr. Anderson as the special referee. How did this measure up to their previous encounter, Will?
Ken Anderson being the referee definitely added more elements to it, that's for sure. He was very comedic in them. He's always very comedic. He's one of my favorites. I know not a lot of people on this show like him, but I like him. He definitely has some comedy into it. Again, he got busted open, so they're still playing the concussion storyline with him. Overall, the match was a lot better this time. At least there was kind of more of a screw job ending for Morgan to lose, and that should have been the last time. WWE gets a lot of crap for their policy. Imagine if this was going on, if Jeff Hardy was the champion right now in WWE, this would be all over the media. But if it's TNA, it's not that big of a deal. And they don't even have a drug policy. Doesn't make any sense to me. And Jeff Hardy, as much as over as he is with people, he is not a safe wrestler. And I don't think he's as special as many people think he is. He's not the guy that can lead TNA.
You're breaking the hearts of so many preteen emo girls on the internet
I don't care.
right now.
I don't care. They only watch it for one thing because they think he looks cute and because he wears face paint. Okay, the guy
okay, that I don't get. He shows up looking like he just got cummed on by a witch and walking out of the swamp, and all these girls are fawning over him. I mean, I could see how girls like John Cena in a complete non-homo way. He's a good-looking guy. But Jeff Hardy, I don't fucking get it. So let's go to someone with a vagina. What'd you think, Corey?
Jeff Hardy kept screwing up moves left and right. I was really hoping Matt Morgan would win. I was behind Matt Morgan the whole way. I really don't see what anybody sees in Jeff Hardy.
You think Matt Morgan's doing good in this slot for his main event run?
He's doing as well as can be expected. This is TNA after all. And for the most part, I liked the match. I liked Ken Anderson. I thought he did a really good job as a referee. The ending with Bischoff and the boy we're not supposed to know is Bischoff's son coming in, that didn't need to happen. I was really hoping that Matt Morgan would drop Jeff Hardy on his face on that chair. I was really hoping for that, so that we'd have a chair that would have the same face paint as the Divas title that they handed Jeff Hardy. I thought that would be a cute little accessory.
Well, thanks, Corey, for input on Final Resolution 2010, the last TNA pay-per-view of the year, but WWE's last pay-per-view at this point in time was Survivor Series, which we talked about on the previous show. TLC's coming up soon, and we'll be covering that next time, but I wanted to do a little experiment, so to speak. The supposed Big Four, the first Big Four of the pay-per-views WWF used to do back in the day, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. A long outdated concept, but we've covered those on the show before. We've done best and worst of Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam histories. That covers what we think are the best and worst matches, moments, and overall shows. So for this time, I'm going to do it the first time on the radio. So I'd like to get to that in another minute, but I want to go to some other calls. I know a lot of you are waiting on the line, so I'll try and get to a lot of you. Ryan from Massachusetts, hello.
All right, I'm just going to start by saying, Eric, if you're going to troll Corey on not liking anything, don't use TNA as a subject. That's just too easy.
Well, I'll think of something a little more elaborate next time. Maybe something about how anime is horrible.
Or you can go to TLDWrestling.com.
I just want to first really just quick backtrack on the Final Resolution pay-per-view. As I've alluded to before on the show, I'm one of the biggest AJ Styles fans ever. So naturally, I kind of hate Doug Williams for taking the title, but at the same time, I can't hate him because the match was really good, and that only makes me hate him more.
Sounds like me talking about Matt Hughes.
Yeah, but just my quick thoughts on the Survivor Series pay-per-view. I thought it was a really solid card back and forth. I have a lot of people on the forums agree with me. Some obviously don't. Some that have tendencies not to like anything WWE. I thought the opener was great. Everyone talked about DiBiase botching. I didn't really notice it a lot. Orton and Sheamus was really good. Ziggler and Caval was a really good match. I didn't like how Caval missed the Phoenix Splash because, oh, hey, it's cool. Oh, he missed. No one cares about it. All they're going to talk about is how he landed on his feet. But elimination match, my own comment is MVP was the single hottest guy in that match, and he was eliminated in under 5 minutes. That was just not needed. The Divas match was good for what it was. Finally, Natalya gets the belt like 5 months late. Kane and Edge was bad. I can't defend it. That was just bad. Nexus versus Santino and Kozlov. How Santino has risen to one of the most popular guys in WWE with the Cobra. The Cobra is the modern-day worm. Let's just get it out of the way. The Cobra is the modern-day worm.
Well, I called it the modern-day tongue and death grip because that used to be my favorite goofy move back in the day, but I'm just glad that they won the tag belts. I think it's great that they got to that level.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, they didn't win it at Survivor Series like you're talking about. They won it last night on Raw.
Last night. But, and with the Cobra, too, which I really liked. And Orton versus Barrett I thought it was a good match. The one thing I didn't like was, I mean, yeah, it was a big WWE title match, but the whole focus was on Cena. Like, they're stipulating, free or fired, but it doesn't have anything to do with either of them actually competing for the belt. So that's one of my little pet peeves. Overall, top to bottom, I thought it was a really great show.
Well, we talked about that pay-per-view, Survivor Series, last time. This time, we'll be talking about Survivor Series history after one more call. Zach from Arkansas, hello.
first off talk about the TNA Impact from this past week. The funniest thing to me, I know it was completely, stupid, but especially to build up on a pay-per-view event for Robbie E. and Jay Lethal, but I think the fist off, or whatever, the fist pump off, whatever it was called, was very funny. Like the
I think the fist off was on Cinemax.
Oh, that's right. So I thought I switched channels too fast, but but I really like. I just liked his facial expressions whenever he was when Robbie E was.
The facial expressions.
It was just so good. It was so good. And for anybody who hasn't watched that, go watch it because it's just funny. The rest was bad, but just watch that. It was just real good. And then also not this past Raw, but the Raw before. With the Miz versus the King. So I thought that was actually a pretty good match. And for, I guess, you kids out there, it just shows just how great a talent of a wrestler, an entertainer the King is as a whole. Just that the fact that he, really didn't take any bumps, any hits, but yet he still had the crowd, on his feet. And it really shows just how, if you're good at what you do, or if you're great, at what you do, you can live pretty much forever, the wrestling fans' minds, just like a Ric Flair right now, So, but anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there for you guys, and thanks for letting me call in. All right, bye, guys.
Thanks a lot, Zach. Bringing up the Miz Lawler match, that has been much lauded, but we're going to get to the best and worst of Survivor Series, and starting off, as we tried to do, we're positive people with the best. So let's go around to the panel. What do you think were some of the best matches in Survivor Series history, Will Brooks?
Bret Hart versus Diesel in the No Holds Barred match, 1995.
Absolutely.
I thought did really cool. Like, we never seen since was when he tied Kevin Nash's leg to the ring post and started hitting him with the chair. I thought that was really cool. I've never seen that before. What since?
Of all the matches that Bret Hart and Nash had, I thought that was their best one.
Only because that was my first one that I ever watched, and I loved it a lot. That was the 1991 Survivor Series where Ric Flair first showed up. That was basically him, Warlord, DiBiase on one side, then you had Bret Hart, Bulldog, Virgil, and Roddy Piper on another. The feud between Roddy Piper and Ric Flair was pretty hot at the time. I really loved that match. I still watch that match to this day. I know that pay-per-view wasn't the highest on regards as far as pay-per-views goes, but that match to me was like one of my favorites just because it was brand new to wrestling, and it definitely hooked me, as that concept of elimination-style matches. Stood out for me as one of my favorite matches, and I still watch to this day.
What I liked about that match is there were a whole generation, and I think it was some of our younger fans around that time, like us, who were seeing Ric Flair for the first time. Now, I hadn't watched WCW. I was all WWF at the point. But I knew of Ric Flair through magazines like Pro Wrestling Illustrated and The Wrestler and the other actor mags at that time. So I knew of Ric Flair, and I knew what they meant by real world champion, here's the belt, and blah, blah, blah. However, Ric Flair coming in and making all these claims to the new audience like us, he had to prove it. And this was one of the first ones. He definitely did at the Rumble a couple months later, really showing us what he was made of. But this was our first hint because this was his first major pay-per-view, and this was the opener, and he survived. He was the only one to survive, I think, on that whole team, and there was that whole big disqualification finish or count-out finish, whatever, and he was the last man standing. Oh, Ric Flair, Slick Rick stuck it out, so that was a pretty cool finish.
Two matches I absolutely loved, and the first one is Survivor Series 2002, Los Guerreros versus Kurt Angle and Here We Do Not Speak Of versus Edge and Rey Mysterio. It was a WWE Tag Team title match. What a great match that was. Just great action all around. You had your technical wrestling, your high flying, and it was really the culmination of that whole time period in WWE where SmackDown was really on fire. They refer to those guys as the SmackDown Six. And that card in general was just good from top to bottom. I really loved that card. Another quick one was Survivor Series 1990, where they had the grand finale match, where it was 3-on-5, the babyface team versus the heel team, where it was Hogan, Warrior, and Tito Santana versus DiBiase, Rick Martel, Power and Glory, and the Warlords.
The Vipers, yes.
Yeah. It was what a great match. What a great concept too, man. Because back then, those 4-on-4 matches were just on fire. They had the cheesy names for the teams and just all the feuds kind of tied together, and it was really well done. So I really enjoyed that grand finale match.
I do too, and not only because, well, let's put it in a modern equivalent. I guess it would have been like the other year if they had done an elimination match maybe between Raw and SmackDown guys or some shit, and the final two winners were the two big guys of the company, Batista and Cena, let's say. But back then it was Hogan Warrior, and everyone's two favorite guys, I think. So it was great to see those two come down to it. But yeah, that's a great concept, and it builds excitement throughout the night. I'm shocked that they only did it once, but that one match was really awesome, and I definitely had that in mind for one of my picks because I loved how it started out where Tito Santana and everyone ganged up on the Warlord really quick and got the big guy out of the biggest guy in the match out immediately. And I remember Piper calling, "Oh, that's an upset! That's an upset!" And this was also the first entire Survivor Series team for every member to survive. The Vipers, like we mentioned, teaming up with DiBiase. So the odds were stacked against the baby faces. They came across at the end, and it was a great visual of those two. I loved it, but I also loved the Bret Hart-Bob Backlund match in 1994. Not only was it a great exhibition of technical wrestling, but the storyline was off the charts. So many angles intersecting between Bob Backlund coming back from never giving up in 1983 against Iron Sheik and winning with a submission, and then the Owen and Bret feud, and then the Backlund-Bret feud. Everything intersected at once, and I thought it was great. But that could qualify as one of the best moments. So let's move on to that. What do you think were one of the best moments in Survivor Series? Will Brooks?
Chuck Norris kicking Jeff Jarrett in 1994.
Yes.
That's definitely up there. Because it's Chuck Norris. I love Chuck Norris, and he was on WF. I thought that was the coolest thing as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
At Survivor Series 2002 again. I really loved the show. I was actually there. And when I saw Brock Lesnar lift up the Big Show and F5 him, and seeing that live was just unbelievable. You just could not believe your eyes when you saw this guy pick up such a monster of an individual and throw him like he was a fucking rag doll. That was definitely, and then that night too, I was really pumped up at the time when Scott Steiner made his big return to WWE and started throwing around Christian with suplexes, man. That was really cool.
Bret Hart's own mother had to throw the towel in the ring to make him tap out. That was one of my favorites. I was so invested. I was such a Bret Hart fan, and for Owen Hart to do that, and then he came out afterwards in the interview, and that was just so funny because it's so Owen Hart. It was so and he's like
crying 1 minute, and then yes, I faked it the next.
Yeah, and then he's like, I'm going to be the next WWE champion. I was like, that was so funny and so dickish.
It's great. He conned his own mother.
It was so good. That match, I think, and that was really great. And then Bob Backlund's like, I regained the belt. I never lost it. It was just so good. That year was actually a good year. That was one of my moments. And 2001 Survivor Series, the invasion coming to an end. Because even though
that's more of a relief than a good moment.
well, yes, but it was still good because still that edge of what if WWE really lost.
Oh, come on. You did not think that.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying the belief that and the fact is that it ended with The Rock and Stone Cold. My favorite part of the ending was that those two got to fight for another 10 minutes. That's what, to me, was good, and then Jericho almost costing The Rock. That was another big thing. That was one of my favorite moments, too.
I'm surprised no one mentioned Undertaker's debut in 1990 also. We mentioned 1990 many times, but that's one that's often replayed. I guess more of the long-term historical impact on it, but they certainly did set the tone for the character immediately, which was good, and I'll never forget him dropping Coco Beware on his head. And it's amazing to think that the big deal 10 years ago was Undertaker's A Decade of Destruction. I'm surprised they didn't make it 2 decades of destruction this year, because last month at Survivor Series was his 20th anniversary in WWE. Unbelievable. But let's move on to some of the best overall shows. Will Brooks.
1992. You had Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart for the championship, which was a good match, and a prelude to 5 years later. You had the very first coffin match ever with Undertaker versus Kamala. You had the nightstick on the pole match with Nails and Big Boss Man, which I thought was a cool feud at the time. Didn't last long because Nails kicked the crap out of McMahon. That's a different story. Yokozuna's pay-per-view debut against Virgil, which was a complete squash. And he even had a great build-up to the tag match between Savage Perfect versus Flair and Razor Ramon. So I thought overall it was a good show.
I totally disagree with that. But anyway, my favorite show, I do like the 2002, the Bischoff, Stone Cold. That was my favorite. And again, 1991 was also one of my favorites, too, as well.
I'm biased to 2002, man. I really love that show from top to bottom. The first ever Elimination Chamber match where Shawn Michaels made his big, I'm not the biggest Shawn Michaels fan, but he finally won the World Heavyweight title after making his big return. And,
in stockings.
Exactly, that's right. The moment in general, the confetti, he took out Triple H. There were some great moments in that match. There was like a cool tables match at the beginning of the card with Jeff Hardy, Bubba Ray Dudley, and Spike Dudley against 3 Minute Warning and Rico. That was pretty good. Even Billy Kidman had a good match with Jamie Noble on that card. Brock Lesnar, Big Show, the big double turn where Paul Heyman aligned with the Big Show and left Brock Lesnar in the dust. That was, and he finally became a babyface. That was really cool. It was a great card up and down. I really enjoyed it.
I was pissed to see Brock Lesnar lose the title, but I guess if he's going to lose it to anybody, it would have been the biggest guy in the company, in his screw job, no less. I'd mentioned 1990. That was the first one I ever ordered, and I still think it's a really great overall show, but I mentioned 1996 on the show previously, and I enjoy that show a lot. I like the Survivor Series tag matches, the Michael Sid match, Austin and Brett having their classic. There was a lot of great stuff in 1996. I was actually just, believe it or not, talking to Kevin Kelly about that show. That was, I believe, Yokozuna's last WWF show. He fucked up Vader with a Uranagi, no less.
No one actually mentioned the screw job, which I love. That's like one of the biggest moments in the history of wrestling, and no one mentioned it. I love it.
It's bad.
Yeah, I don't
still
get
a moment.
that.
It's still a moment. I'm just saying
it's not fucking good. This is best moments.
Yes, but most people would
that'd be like saying the JFK assassination is one of the best moments in U.S. history.
Perhaps.
Well, anyway, let's move on to some of the worst shit. So, backtracking to the matches, what were some of the worst matches?
The Floyd Doink beating Bam Bam, Bastard Booger, and the Head Shrinkers from 1993. Bushwhackers and Men on a Mission were dressed up as clowns.
Right. I don't think you could argue that one very much, but let's see some other ideas. Will Vafides.
The 3-on-3 match in 91, though, is a little weird, too.
You mean that they ended the night with LOD and Bossman against Natural Disasters and IRS?
I love that match, man.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the way to end the pay-per-view, that was not the way to end it. That was one of them, and one of them also, too, was the Truth Commission versus Disciples of Apocalypse. I'm just like, that was when we had, like, 10 stables, and that was in 97. That one I remember. That was part of
the Gang Wars.
One. Yeah, I just didn't understand that one.
Well, it's constantly called the Gang Wars. The subtitle of the pay-per-view is Gang Rules. But let's move on to Jay Leto. What do you think was some of the worst matches, Jay?
Bret Hart and all his brothers wrestled Shawn Michaels and his Knights. I guess
that wasn't his Knights.
There was Jerry Lawler's Knights. He fucked a 14-year-old girl or something like that, and
No. Let's get it right. Allegedly, a 13-year-old said that Lawler had sex with her or touched her, something like that. But he was acquitted. But that fucked up this big angle they were doing at the time, and they inserted Shawn Michaels in there. And it seems like Shawn Michaels constantly fights Bret Hart at Survivor Series.
Yeah, that definitely fucked it up for anybody who watched that show because it really made no goddamn sense. Jerry Lawler with his sleazy, queasy, cheesy, wheezy, and whoever the fuck against the Doinks. It was like
that
Doink
was a funny
and
match.
Doink, Wink, and Pink.
Yeah, Dink, Pink, whatever the Fink,
Wink.
whatever the fuck.
Wink.
Yeah, wink. Yeah, that was funny, but again, like that whole time period, those Survivor Series matches were just really cheesy and shit. They just, some of them weren't really good. They were pretty goddamn awful.
Doink is a go-to answer, it seems, for these, that one being in 1994 with all the midgets. There's a couple ones in the chat room I wanted to bring up. From 2006, the Spirit Squad against the, quote, legends, or as I like to call them, the agents. Seeing Arn Anderson in, like, a polo shirt and pants standing on the apron in this, quote, match was just very sad. But someone also mentioned Hogan and Undertaker in 1991. I think you got something to say about that, Will Brooks.
Yeah, I had that as like one of my worst moments with when Hogan gets tombstone, but it's like a foot off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It was really ugly looking. Like even as a kid, I'm thinking, come on, you can't get a better camera angle than that.
Yeah, that might have. I don't think that would be the first off the top of my list for worst moments, but we'll move on to that now that you mention it. That tombstone did suck, especially when the whole finish was supposed to be with Flair putting in the chair and Hogan selling this neck injury afterwards, and it clearly didn't hit. It seems like Undertaker was being very ginger with his tombstones around then. I remember when he tombstoned Jake Roberts at WrestleMania just a few months later, it didn't look like he got anywhere near. Not that you should spike someone on the head, but there's a point where it just takes you completely out of the moment. But some of the worst moments, I think Will Fidesz would be the screw job, obviously, but I guess you disagree with that. So what do you think were some of the worst moments?
Well, I only disagree with that because it brought the Mr. McMahon character and brought some pretty good damn TV. That's the only reason why I'd say that was one of the best moments, just because of that.
Yeah, what's honor and dignity when you can have good TV?
Hey, I'm a Bret Hart fan, okay? Let's just bring that all out there. The Kane Edge match of this year was pretty bad.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad.
It could have been a great moment, but considering what happened shortly after was when Stone Cold in 2000, in his match with Triple H, lifted Triple H was in a car, and he lifted him like 25, 30 feet in the air.
With
and
a crane
or
something.
And the car flipped and dropped, completely destroying the car with Triple H inside. And 3 weeks later, Triple H runs down to the ring with a sledgehammer and takes out Austin Smith.
He fucking killed Triple H on pay-per-view.
He killed him. He literally killed him. There's no way anybody would ever survive something like that. You're fucking dead. And,
wait a minute, Jay. So Jesus rose after 3 days, Triple H rose after 3 weeks. He's a little slower than Jesus, but he still makes the comeback from death. No sell, you death.
We could have been free from all this Triple H bullshit, but no.
But let's keep in mind that was connected to and was a follow-up to what I'm going to mention as one of the worst, which was Austin getting run over in 99. This was Austin's revenge for that, and the reason I thought it sucked in 99 was, well, okay, they already set up the Triple H, Austin, Rock triple threat match that we never got to see, three of the biggest names of the Attitude Era, and it never happened. I know you're upset about that, Will Fidesz, but... But, okay, so Austin's fucked up, and this is the shit they come up with as an excuse. And then they tie it together with the Big Show angle where he won it for his fake dead dad, Yippee Skippy. But they do this with this ridiculous stunt segment and had no idea what to do with it, obviously. So when they come up with big shit like that and then have to backtrack and don't know what the fuck they're doing, it's just sad and pathetic. But sad and pathetic could be words to describe an overall show, so let's move on to that. What were some of the worst shows overall in Survivor Series history, Will Brooks?
Before I mention all overall shows, I always want to mention one more worst moment of all time, the gobbledygook. Then I'm done. I forgot to mention that earlier, but you kind of cut me off after I said the tombstone. But anyway, 93.
That's the All-Americans versus the Foreign Fanatics one.
Yeah, and one of the All-Americans is the Undertaker. Yeah, okay.
Hey, he's an American badass.
Well, yeah, but it was like 10 years too early, man. When the Foreign Fanatics is crushed, a guy from Hawaii.
Hawaii's a foreign country in WWE world.
Yeah, and it's also the same. It's also the same card with the Four Doinks versus the Head Shrinkers, Box of Booger, and Bam Bam Bigelow. And they actually, they actually swept them, I believe.
And it ended with Lex Luger and Santa Claus.
They actually defended the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team titles, the Heavenly Bodies, and the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah, and that was probably the best match on the show.
Yeah.
Will Fidesz, some of the worst Survivor Series.
92. I mean, after watching 91 and then watching 92, and of course 99, I was very disappointed with the ending because three biggest names in the company and the match couldn't happen. And yeah, I'm glad the Big Show won the belt. It was his big moment. but that's not what you can't fool a fan who's paying for that show. You know, that's what disappointed me was that, you know, we paid for that show, and the match that I wanted to see was pulled, you know, off, basically. And they had a replacement with the Big Show, but they probably didn't even need a replacement. So that's why I didn't like that.
1997, a moment where the Attitude Era really came to a head and the Ms. McMahon character was born. But I fucking hated the Montreal Screwjob, man, when they did the Bret Hart. I stopped watching wrestling for a while after WrestleMania 12 because as a kid I was so fucking pissed off when Shawn Michaels beat Bret Hart in the Iron Man match. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't believable to me. I did not understand how that could happen. And this card from top to bottom wasn't really that great. Stone Cold and Owen Hart, he got a revenge on him.
Yeah, but he could barely move, so it was like a punch, kick, 5-minute match.
Yeah,
and
exactly. If I recall, it was about 5 minutes long. And from top
the Survivor
to bottom,
Series tag matches weren't that good. And
no.
I mean, Michaels and Brett were having a good brawl, which technically didn't count as the match because the bell rang way after that brawl started. And it wasn't exactly the wrestling match that we're used to seeing from those two. It was a completely different style. Obviously, the intrigue in that show was what's going to happen because we all know the situation going into it. And unfortunately, it didn't come across in the best way at the time. WWF recovered afterwards, I suppose. But I think the best match was probably Undertaker and Mankind, and that was still Undertaker. Kane and Mankind.
Kane and Mankind.
Yeah, excuse me, mixing up the brothers. It was Kane and Mankind in Kane's first pay-per-view match, and they were trying out that weird red lighting for the entire match, and Foley's trying to save it by taking his big bumps as usual, and didn't save the whole show, I don't think. There's a certain mystique around the 1997. I don't know if it's good in the quote-unquote traditional sense, but I'm going to go back to 2001. I've said my piece about 1998. I know people like the moments, Shane turns and Rock turns and blah, 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 but I think all the matches sucked. There wasn't one really good wrestling match on there, and Mankind Austin was okay, but definitely not on the level of the ones they just had earlier that year, so I didn't think it was a good wrestling pay-per-view. Obviously, people only like it for the storylines, but 2001, like Dudley's and Hardy's had a decent unification match, but that was about the only good thing on the night. That whole final Survivor Series match with the Team Alliance versus Team WF put me to sleep at 45 minutes.
That was a long match.
Yeah, I was struggling to keep my eyes open through that horrible shit, and it was just an end to a very bad, long storyline, and the other matches were just fucking dumb, too. They debuted Jazz on the last night of the Alliance. It just seemed weird. Test and Edge, whatever. So 2001, I have nothing really good to say about. But before we wrap it up here, wanted to switch gears and mention a movie, The Expendables. We've talked a lot about Stone Cold Steve Austin. He is in this movie, along with Randy Couture and a few other MMA fighters like the Nogueira brothers. But wanted a little change of pace because we've only done one movie review so far, and it's funny enough, the two movies that we've talked about on the show, Mickey Rourke is in. Wanted to talk about this movie because I just got the Blu-ray today. Let's see what you guys think. Will Brooks, what'd you think of the movie?
Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I felt like I walked out of the theater and wanted to punch a guy in the face. My testosterone levels was huge. It was great.
When they said it was an action movie, it was a damn good action movie, actually. Really gruesome stuff. I love that Stone Cold and Couture had a fight against each other. Of course, you knew Austin was going to lose, but you're always cheering for Austin to win. But I thought the movie was actually very good. It had a little bit of comedy in it. Definitely had a lot of great action in it. I thought it was a very good movie. I was very happy with that. I heard they're coming out with another one. But,
it's set to shoot in March, and somehow Stone Cold might be in it. I don't get that. Not to give you anyone spoilers, but Randy Couture pretty much set him on fucking fire and killed him.
Yeah. I mean, unless they're going to do flashbacks, that's the only thing I could see him doing. Yeah, I thought it was a good movie.
Maybe he'll come back in a red mask with a fat man and an urn. I somewhat fashion myself as a movie buff. Now that I'm not going to say I'm Robert Osborne from TCM as a movie historian or anything, but I've taken film classes, TV classes. I think I have a good appreciation for film, and I enjoyed this movie, a good action movie. I'm not going to nitpick it per se because, I mean, I'm not a fan of shaky cam. I mean, when I talked about The Wrestler, this Oscar-nominated movie, and I ripped on it, and see, like, I think Mickey Rourke is a good actor. I especially liked him in this movie. And I thought him and Marissa Tomei were really good in the Wrestler movie. It's just everything that wrapped around them I didn't like. The production, the shooting, the story, just to clear that up. And incidentally, the most unrealistic part of that movie, to me, was when Marissa Tomei was playing the stripper. And, of course, there's the parallel between the wrestler and the stripper in that movie, and I thought it was a great parallel. But when she had a hard time getting customers, are you fucking kidding me? I would go to the ATM for that bitch. But anyway, back to this movie. People, I think, were ripping on Mickey Rourke's key scene as Tool, the tattoo man, and I loved it. I loved the lighting, the blue lighting when he's in front of the mirror painting the guitar. Stallone as Barney comes up and they're exchanging war stories about all the places they've been and this woman he didn't save. And I thought Mickey Rourke really sold it. It was a great emotional scene, and people were ripping on it for being an emotional scene in this action movie. Like, yeah, we need this all the time. But that's what Stallone does in his movies. And you were talking about the gore before, but his last Rambo movie was gory as shit, but there's a great heart underneath the character. There's a great story to be told. And if you get the Blu-ray, there's a great making of. It's almost like a production diary, which, by the way, has an Anderson Silva cameo, which is pretty funny. They were shooting in Brazil, and they go to an MMA show, and he was there. So that was pretty cool to see Anderson Silva on this. But anyway, there's planning that goes into this. Everyone has this impression of Stallone that he's just some musclehead idiot, but he co-wrote, starred in, and directed this movie all at the same time. And it's the first non-Rocky or Rambo movie that he's directed in, like, decades. But I think he does a good job. He uses some shaky cam shit here and there, but not overuses it like Darren Aronofsky, who, by the way, is going to be starting the Wolverine 2 movie soon, which the storyline is he goes to Japan and Wolverine gets hooked on heroin. Now, that's an Aronofsky joke, but anyway. I wasn't too crazy about the CG blood, but if you add up all the seconds that is in the movie, it's probably like less than 2 seconds. So it wasn't that unbearable. But the best special effects are the ones that you don't even notice. And those are the scenes that they're in the truck or the sets. They add in some Keaton backgrounds, and you don't even tell. It seems like they're actually there. So that's pretty cool. But don't you think, guys, that Van Damme and Steven Seagal look like real fucking idiots after this came out and they weren't in it?
Totally.
Well, Van Damme is going to be doing a kickboxing fight in Las Vegas next year, so I don't think he'll be in the production schedule for this one. But you brought up Austin Wilvafides, and I think it's funny because, well, first of all, the scene where he actually punched a woman and Eric Roberts was talking about how Austin has no problem punching a woman, a little uncomfortable. But
he took. Yeah.
But it's, I almost feel bad for him because it's almost like I can't take him seriously, because when he's yelling at Stallone, he's like, "You think you're a tough guy, ain't you? You think you're a real badass." And I'm thinking like he's talking to The Rock. You know what I mean?
You could definitely see some Stone Cold when he was doing his acting. He was killing Stallone too in that movie, man. He was kicking his ass.
Oh, you should see the making of. Stallone got fucked up. Foot injury, spinal injury, cuts all over on his head and his hand. He really put a lot into this movie.
Yeah,
well, speaking
and
of Stallone,
back.
You hear about Stallone? I found out today he's actually getting inducted to the Boxing Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Playing for Rocky, but yeah, I love Rocky. It's my favorite movie, but yeah, that's fun. I thought it was funny too.
Hey, every time Rocky's on TV, you watch it. Everybody does it.
I love the marathons that come on every year. I love the Rocky marathons.
Well, he's kept himself in great shape with all that growth hormone he's taken, so if he keeps painting on his eyebrows or whatever, it looks like he was painting on his eyebrows in this movie, but I hope he keeps it up. And who would you like to see in the sequel, Will Brooks?
I know they're going to bring Bruce Willis back, as he's going to have a bigger part. That's going to be cool. But
I think Stallone said that Church is going to be the villain in this one.
Yeah, I think he is too. Maybe The Rock. That'd be kind of cool.
Rock's got to be in it. Will Vafides?
I'd like to see Jean-Claude Van Damme. That would be pretty cool.
Well, like I said, I think he might miss the production because he's fucking fighting in Vegas in a kickboxing fight. But I think...
But, I still think, he hasn't been seen for a while. It'd be good to see him again. Like Dolph Lundgren, we haven't seen him on a major motion picture in a long time. He looked great.
Yeah.
He looked real good. So
I think they got to bring in Jackie Chan to fight Jet Li.
Yeah.
And I think that Tool, they set him up great with that backstory of he used to fight in Serbia and Nigeria with Stallone. So I think it'd be cool to see Mickey Rourke get on the team and in action in this sequel. And if someone's going to take over the tattoo shop, I think Hulk Hogan should.
You can't take him serious.
He can't walk
though.
Anyway.
Well, you can't take. I mean, how many? He's been like a lot of roles in movies, but Hulk Hogan. Can you really take him seriously as like a real serious like heel like in the movie? I mean, be honest.
Not any more serious than Dolph Lundgren. But anyway, just wanted to talk about the Expendables there because I'm a big fan of Terry Crews too from the Battle Dome days, so I'm glad to see him get in the movie. Check out Expendables when you get the chance. And that's going to wrap it up for this time on Wrestling Roundtable Radio. Next time, we're going to be talking about UFC 124, the Koscheck GSP fight, along with WWE's TLC pay-per-view, and we hope to follow up with the best and worst debuts, returns, and makeovers show that's available on YouTube. Want to remind you to check out ACPW Wrestling on Saturday the 11th. That's this Saturday. If you're in Philadelphia, check it out with Pelly Primo, Shane Hagedorn, Alex Payne, and more. Go to acpwrestling.com. That's acpwrestling.com to find out more. TLDwrestling.com as well. And, of course, the WrestlingRoundtable.com site. Everything Wrestling Roundtable is there if you want to check us out on Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, Go Fight Live. Everything is there, along with signing up for the newsletter, message board, columns by Bill Treadway and Zach Fellows, and everything else, Wrestling Roundtable. But before I sign off, I want to send out some well wishes to Superstar Billy Graham. I was real upset to see him put out that press release about how he seems to be on his way out. I met Superstar a couple years ago, and he was really great. Hope things go as best they can, Superstar, and our thoughts go out to you. And my thoughts go out to you as well. Thanks for listening, and join us next time on Blog Talk Radio, WrestlingRoundtable.com.